Hi. I apologize if my voice is scratchy. I've been sick. Uh, but I'll see if I can get through this 10-minute presentation. So what I guess we're gonna talk about the operating systems course and my implementation of the operating system. As a overview, I guess we'll talk about some of the things that I did in relation to memory allocation, the shell, uh, supervisor calls, the scheduler, all that fun stuff. I'll probably just glance over a bunch of them because I did use a lot of the furnished code and it all seemed to work very well once it was integrated. Um, so most of the stuff that I did, yeah, was based off what the homeworks required and what the furnished code provided. I did leave the scheduler as a round robin scheduler, but I did experiment with adding extra quanta to it so that you could have a process that uh, had processor time for X amount more. Um, but I don't see that really being required of any of our devices. Um, I did not add any new devices or I/O. So for memory allocation, I used FIFO, which is the first in, first out, and it seems to work fairly well. The I think one of the drawbacks might be that since there's no memory protection, it's easier for blocks to collide with FIFO, which was one of the things that happened to me, and I guess a lot of other people too. Um, with memory allocation, I did put a binary semaphore on it, so when you're accessing memory to either free it or to allocate it, you need to down the lock or down the semaphore and then up it when you leave that when you're finished. So the shell, I did add a bunch of extra commands. I think I did add backspace and a lot of extra mapping because I think that was pretty important to see your processes and your files and your memory. Um, so the file system was something I was pretty interested in, and I did set up um, a pretty deeply nested linked list with pointers that point along their branch and branch off at directory nodes. Um, it's 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 actually not that hairy because you always have a root node to go back to. So for the term project, I was figuring that I didn't have enough time to implement one of the devices that I wanted to do. But this was in line with what I was going to do anyways, just like a secondary thing, which was user accounts, some access control, and of course the semaphore I already talked about. And there's a bunch of extra calls in the shell. So I can start the demo. Let's see. So I'm using PyD, which I know a bunch of other people are using. So the first thing you get to on my shell is a user login screen, and a bunch of users are bootstrapped just because for demonstration purposes. But you can add them and you can subtract them to your heart's content. So I'm just going to demonstrate one of the things that you can do. So one of the users is Alice, and she has a password that is not secure. And when you ls, you see the root file system. So if you try and go into a directory that you are not the owner of and that you are not a part of the group that directory is associated with, you will get an error that is denying you access to that directory. So one of the ACL rules that I've ignored is the X for executable, just because we don't have executables. And if you really wanted to cd into a directory, you would need the +X. But for the simple case, I've lumped that in with the W. So in this case, no one can go into either of them. So Bob can't go into Alice's directory and vice versa. So one way to get around that is, of course, there is a root user with pretty unlimited power. So he could do things like change owners, change groups, change the ACL rules. So one of the things he could do is a chown. So this would be a change owner, and he could change like Bob's directory to not be owned by Bob, or I guess to be owned by Bob, but to be part of a different group. So now it's a part of the same group that Alice is a part of. So if you log out and you log back in as Alice, you will be able to access Bob's directory. And he's got a Python file in there, which is cool. Cool. So thanks for listening. I know I'm not a fast speaker, so thanks. Happy holidays.